Welcome to Bolo Realtors Forum for ballot question 2F. Should Ordinance 8483 be repealed? Ordinance 8483 annexes the CU South property into the city of Boulder. At this morning's forum, we have speakers from No Means No More Delay presenting first, and Repeal CU South Annexation presenting second. Neither will be present during the other's presentation. Each will have the opportunity to present and answer questions from the audience. If you have a question, please put it in the chat and I will present the question to the speaker. This forum is being recorded and will be posted later on Bolo Realtors website, which is bolorealtors.com. We do ask that all attendees please go off camera and make sure that you remain muted at all times. I would like to introduce Leslie Durgan. She is the former City of Boulder mayor and current campaign chair for the No Means No More Delay Committee. She is a longtime community advocate and has served in several civic-minded roles at the Boulder Chamber, Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, the Colorado Chautauqua Association, Boulder County United Way, and the American Civil Liberties Union of Colorado. Leslie is committed, alongside many highly respected community leaders, to ensuring the critical flood mitigation is made possible by the CU South Annexation Agreement. Leslie, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you now.
Great. Thank you, Amy. And
Very
good
well.
morning to everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to present No Means No More Delay. For those of you that were on the webinar last year, this will sound somewhat familiar because here we are again voting on an issue that in fact we voted on last year. Quick history. In 1996, the University of Colorado, CU, purchased this property. As you come down Davidson Mesa on 36, many of you will be familiar with this. You look over onto the left or to the south, and there are 308 acres that are currently undeveloped, and there is a building that says home of CU South. So you get sort of the geography of where we are. In September of 2021, the City Council voted to adopt the annexation to bring this property owned by the university into the city in exchange for a significant number of benefits, which I will detail. 2 months later, a group of citizens required that the community vote on whether we wanted to annex this property. The citizens overwhelmingly, 57%, said yes, we do want to annex this. Same group of citizens forced the issue back on the ballot again. And in November, on the 8th, the same question essentially will be before the voters of Boulder. Do we want to annex this property? I will talk about why we believe that is the right thing to do. So the university has, in agreement with the city of Boulder, developed an annexation agreement that says in exchange for being brought into the city boundaries, the city provides utilities, water, sewer, electrical, to that area, that geographic area, and in exchange, we get a significant number of benefits. We think this is a really good deal for the community. Up on the screen, you'll see there are 3 basic areas that the CU South, as we call it, the 308 acres, will be divided into. Down in the lower right-hand side is open space. Currently, this property has no open space on it officially. It's used as open space, but the university owns it all. They are willing to allow the city to acquire open space. At the top of the property, the area that is most contiguous to 36, and also your building in Boulder, as a matter of fact, will be the flood control zone. I will detail some of the benefits and need for that, but you can see the blue area is either directly dedicated to flood control, or, as I'll talk about, recreation fields that will serve as a retention area in the case of a flood. And finally, that sort of yellow tan color is the property that the university can develop. It is just below Majestic Heights as it goes down to the lower valley. So you get a sense of the property itself. And then let me go ahead and talk about, Amanda, okay to shift, the flood protection benefits. In 2013, as many of you will remember, the flood from South Boulder Creek poured across 36, Highway 36, into the Fraser Meadows, and the Keewaydin neighborhoods. And there was significant flooding. The people at Fraser Meadows literally were carried out in the staff arms to get out of the rushing water that was about waist deep for me, and higher for smaller people. So we really had a very significant, not only flooding issue, but life safety issue. Flood protection is one of the major benefits of this annexation. And there are a number of myths that are floating around, and I just want to address some of them. First, however, I'll point out that 2,300 community members, or 1,100 dwelling units, will now be protected from flood protection that is part of this annexation. And the university and the university donate the property, the city and FEMA and all of that will build actually flood protection. There'll be a flood wall and there'll be a berm that will protect downstream neighbors. One of the myths is that there will be development or building in the floodplain. It will not happen, it's illegal. And there will be no development of any kind, no standing structures in the floodplain. Also, it's illegal to take water and push it onto either downstream or neighboring properties. So we cannot force any kind of flood water onto adjacent properties. And significant for the entire community is that it keeps open 36 and Foothills Highway, both of which flooded in 2013. And those are the emergency routes, both for first responders getting into the neighborhood, which they couldn't do in 2013. And it keeps those roads open for people trying to get out of that area. So it really has a whole community benefit in addition to protecting the 2,300 community members that are directly impacted with this high hazard zone. Let's go on to the next slide, Amanda. Environmental benefits, very important in this annexation agreement. As I mentioned, that currently there is no official open space on that property. People walk their dogs, go bird watching, all that business, but it's because the university allows it. They don't by law have to do that, but they will make 119 acres available for city-owned open space, a huge benefit to us. Remember, 308 acres total, 119 of those will be turned into open space. We will get floodplain restoration and preservation out of this. South Boulder Creek is a very important riparian area, and we will be able to restore a lot of that wetland. And many of you will remember this used to be a gravel mining, and we'll get 40 acres of that previous mining acre area restored to wetlands. We also get some dry creek ditch water. And you'll hear, I think, from the opposition, well, we're giving treated water and we're getting ditch water. Yes, that's exactly right. That's what we need. We need that ditch water to restore the wetlands. We don't need treated water out there. The university does, and that's part of the trade-off here. And finally, there will be outdoor lighting and noise mitigation on open space as there is on other open space in the community. So there really is a significant environmental benefit as well as flood protection to annexation. Then the third area is housing and development. And this, as you more than anybody know, the housing crisis that we have in Boulder. And so here's what's going to happen with housing on that property. Their community will get 5 acres, 150 units of affordable housing that is available to people not associated with the university, community affordable housing. The university will create about 1,100 housing units for faculty, staff, and upperclassmen that will provide for those university-associated people housing opportunity there. We anticipate that it will reduce some of the inflow coming in from other communities as people come to work in Boulder but can't afford to live here. The housing has to come first, and it has to be built at a 2-to-1 ratio, residential to non-residential. The non-residential at the university plans to build is probably classrooms and laboratory space and some offices. It's not going to be a shopping center. It's not going to be some massive commercial development. You'll hear that it's the size of downtown. And of course, some of the opponents are purporting that this will look like downtown in another part of Boulder. Not going to happen. The annexation agreement is very, very clear about that. And so we get through this annexation, flood control, we get housing, and we get environmental benefits. So I think that really, as you'll see here, there are significant benefits to this annexation, which, if it is overturned, if 2F goes forward, means we lose all of this. We go back to square one. We have no confidence that the university or the community will be able to secure this kind of agreement in the future. I should also mention that the university has agreed to comply with all of our building regulations, including height and setbacks. As a state agency, they're not required to do that, but they have agreed as part of this annexation to comply with our regulations. So there won't be another Williams Village out on CU South. It will be relatively low, and where the higher buildings are permitted, it is down in the valley floor. So the lowest impact is near the Martin Acres neighborhood. For that reason, we are encouraging people to vote against this referendum. One of the key issues that is often raised, and it is a concern for the community, I understand that, is what is this going to do to transportation? And people in South Boulder that I've spoken to use this as their primary concern. I understand that, but let me tell you what the transportation regulations will say. They'll have expanded connectivity between this property as developed and for bikes and peds under Highway 36. A lot of controversy about an additional road that would go from this property up to Highway 93, which is the road to Golden. That will be an entrance and exit used only in emergencies as needed. You never want to build with only one road in and out, because as we saw in the Marshall Flyer, we need plenty of access for people getting out of harm's way. But that Highway 93 entrance will only be used as needed. There'll be, as there always are, bus routes, and the university will run as they do with Williams Village buses. And then something we've never done in Boulder before, we're actually going to cap or restrict the number of vehicle trips to 6,300 a day. It will be measured, and the university will pay a penalty if they exceed the cap. And it really will create the strictest traffic management program in the city. So that, while it remains a concern of many people in South Boulder, I think will be very adequately addressed and with some flexibility as part of this annexation agreement. So go ahead, Amanda. The great process that has occurred is something that we strongly support, absent having to vote on this thing twice. But the negotiations were released to the public. Not happy from the attorney's point of view, but really transparent. It is a legally binding agreement. You'll hear that City Council could overturn the binding agreement. The university could vote to change the agreement. I'd love to be a lawyer on that one. And it had nearly 100 public hearings. So it really has been an agreement, an annexation agreement, thoroughly vetted within the community. Okay. Here's why we're really urging a no vote on 2F, which I have to tell you will be at the bottom of your ballot, and it's a long ballot. So we hope you'll stick with us all the way down to 2F and vote no. We get flood safety for the community. We get open space, which we don't currently have, and we get attainable housing, both for the university, faculty, staff, and upperclassmen, and for the community. So we are urging people to support the annexation agreement, to oppose the referendum. And it's a sort of an odd way to phrase this election, but this is what was required. No means we go ahead with the annexation agreement. So we are saying no more delay, especially about flooding. We'd probably get the flood protection in 2 years. We'd get the open space even faster and attainable housing sometime in the future. If we are able as a community, as we have already done once before, to say we support this annexation agreement. So I'm happy to take any questions. And we've got about 10 minutes, probably a little bit shorter than that, if there are any questions. Amy, got any in the chat?
I don't see any in the chat. Do any of the attendees have something they would like to ask of Leslie? If you do, go ahead and put it in chat, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask. I think you've got an audience that pretty much knows which direction they're going.
I suspect so. You know, I overlooked one thing since we've got a minute, if it's okay. Another thing you'll often hear, and it's a myth, is that we ought to be building a 500-year rather than 100-year flood protection program. And the city looked at it very seriously, because it sounds like, to those of us that aren't water engineers, 500-year protection is 5 times better than 100. In fact, that isn't how it works. But the city engineers, together with the FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers, looked at whether we could even build a 500-year flood protection. The answer is no. It forces water into the community. It forces water in a very dangerous way to impact the bridge that is part of Highway 36. And the 100-year flood protection really will provide a significant amount of protection for downstream neighbors, and also give people time to get out if we have a more significant flooding event. So you'll hear that we should be building 500-year because of climate change. In fact, we cannot, and the engineers have said the 100-year is really not only adequate, it's very beneficial.
Leslie, we have 2 questions, actually.
Okay.
First one is, to be clear, The annexation has already been voted on and approved.
Correct. The city council in September of 2021 voted on it and approved it. The citizens of Boulder, 2 months later, November of 21, said, in essence, we support the city council decision. So this is a second opportunity for the citizens of Boulder to say, we support this annexation. We do not want to overturn the annexation.
Thank you. And the second question, are there references to the specific areas, 1,100 homes, units that will be protected?
I'm not quite understanding the question.
Where is the specific areas of the homes that will be protected?
Will be protected?
Oh,
okay, well, it's downstream. It's Fraser Meadows area, Fraser, Keewaydin. That's the area that will be protected with flood protection. If the question is really, do we know where it's odd because they're the same number of units. Do we know where the 1,100 homes that the university is going to build, apartments, that is in the development area that is adjacent to Majestic Heights, but goes down the hill into the valley. So you'll see the tan area called development zone. That's where the university can put housing and can put their offices and classroom buildings. So that's 1,100 units. In addition, the flood protection will provide a lot of safety for an odd number, 1,100 units that are down in Fraser Meadows and Keewaydin.
Fantastic, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, do we up? All right, thank you very much. Leslie, thank you for your presentation. We are going to conclude the no means no presentation. And just everybody, please take your time to vote and vote all the way through, not just at the first part of this very large ballot guide that's, it's something else. Anyway, all right, Leslie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amanda, thank you for helping. And
thanks, Amy.
We will talk to you soon. Okay, you
Okay,
guys.
thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Here in just a moment, we will have our next speaker join us. So just to reiterate, if you would please remain off camera. If you have any questions for our upcoming speaker, put them in the chat and we'll run the presentation the same way that we did with no means no. Margaret, you want to go ahead and come on screen and unmute yourself, and I'm going to introduce you.
Okay, I just wanted to ask one thing. I have not done a webinar like this presentation for a long time, very much prior pandemic. So I may need to have a little help connecting with my screen. So I hope you guys can help me walk through that.
Yeah, George will. George will actually make it so that you can share your screen.
Yep, I have already given you screen share abilities. So on the bottom of your screen, there's a little green, it's like a green square with an arrow.
Uh-huh.
And you should be able to click that and pick which screen you would like to share.
All righty, and that will bring up me and my PowerPoint because I'd like to have them both on screen.
You're already up, so it should bring up your PowerPoint once you open it up and select that screen to share.
Okay, thank you for helping me not be a nervous Nelly on this.
No, my pleasure.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay.
Right. Okay, I would like to introduce Margaret Markey Lacombe. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Markey.
Yes, you did.
She is the thank you. She is the co-founder and executive committee member of the repealed CU South Annexation campaign. A longtime South Boulder resident, Markey joined the University of Colorado faculty in 1990, teaching graduate research methods and sociology in the School of Education. A lifelong hiker and birder, she has been active in promoting environmental protection for the South Boulder Creek floodplain and effective flood control in her neighborhoods. In 2013, having retired from CU, she experienced flooding throughout her neighborhood. In 2015, she helped co-fund Save South Boulder, an association of neighborhoods which, since its start, has advocated effective flood control and best practice flood management for the South Boulder Creek floodplain. In 2018, Save South Boulder joined forces with Plan Boulder County and the Southeast Boulder Neighborhood Association to form Repeal CU South Annexation. Repeal has actively campaigned for better flood management, and especially it supports allowing Boulder residents to vote on whether or not Boulder should annex and develop the CU South property. They believe the City Council's annexation of CU South would have direct and negative impacts on the environment and on flood mitigation plans in South Boulder. It would also be responsible for an extraordinary cost and needless, ineffective flood control designs at CU South. They support referendum 2F on the November 8th ballot, which would permit voters to repeal the flawed annexation agreement. With that, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me just see if I can do this. Ready? Okay. I explained that it's been a long time since I have done a slideshow like this for
No
a lot of
worries. So
people.
what are you seeing right now?
I'm seeing my slideshow and in the PowerPoint, and I just want to get it to the single. There we go. Now I'm seeing this. I'm seeing my slideshow, but I don't see me. Now what do I do?
You have to click that share screen button that I showed you on the bottom, the green screen.
Okay,
When you're in Zoom.
okay, I'm not. All right, let me get out of
So
this.
go back to the Zoom meeting.
Okay, unfortunately, I've lost all my icons on the bottom of the screen. And okay, how do I?
So whatever you're looking at is in full screen mode. That's what makes it get rid of the bottom.
Right, but I can't find the icon to get rid of the full screen mode.
Which are you looking at, Zoom or PowerPoint right now?
PowerPoint.
So I think you press escape to get out. Are you in the slideshow mode?
Yeah, I am.
I think you press escape to back out of the full screen of that.
Okay, this is what happens when you have retired a long time ago. There we go. Now.
Okay, so now go click on, do you see the icons at the bottom again? Like the little, it's like a blue button with a white camera on it.
Blue button. Yeah, I got that. So now I'm back.
So bring up the Zoom. That's the Zoom meeting.
Yep.
And then, so do you see the share screen green button on the bottom of Zoom?
Yep.
You'll click on that and it should open up all the screens you have open.
I'm getting a message saying host disabled participant screen sharing.
Let's see what's going on here.
So I think you have to disable what you disabled.
I just got to reset it. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Okay, now try it.
Okay. There we go.
And then, so then you select the PowerPoint one.
Alrighty, got it.
And then share screen. There you go. And
okay.
All right, there we go.
Thank you so much for this.
My pleasure.
All right. And I just need to, there we go. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for letting me come and speak to you. I want to talk about why people should vote yes for Measure 2F, the referendum that repeals Ordinance 8483 that annexed the CU South property. Basically, we're not against annexation and we're not against flood mitigation per se, which is what the opposition has been saying. We're against this particular annexation because it is a very bad deal for Boulder. And I want to explain a little bit about that. This is the history of this property goes back a long way, from Indian land to a homestead, to a dairy ranch, to a gravel mine, from CU's sneaky purchase in 1995 to 23 years of CU's neglect of the property, to CU's expansionist aspirations in the 1990s, and then to the current controversy. So I'm going to try to go really fast through this and get to the meat of what our problems are. But the important thing is to understand that this is a long time controversy, and it is the stakes for the city of Boulder could not be higher. Since the 1950s, CU had the city of Boulder had wanted the land preserved as open space to protect the iconic gateway to Boulder and also to mitigate flooding, which is what floodplains do. The Boulder community since the 1970s wanted the land preserved for scenic value, its passive recreation, preservation of open space and wildlife habitat once the mining had ceased. The University of Colorado, however, since the 1990s, has coveted the land for future development. What's the problem? So the city's agenda and the university and the community's agenda were incompatible with the university's agenda. And CU South does not have enough acreage to support both the city's flood mitigation needs and all of CU's desires. The problem also is that flood mitigation must be prioritized over CU's or anybody's development agenda. But CU dictated to the city a flood project whose #1 priority was design a flood project to avoid CU's developable land and don't design it for optimal flood mitigation. So look at the spot. This was taken just a few days ago. And this is this very spot where CU wants to build a brand new campus. It's what you see when you drive into Boulder from the south. It's 308 acres in the South Boulder Creek floodplain at the foot of the entire Front Range. And it was under Boulder County jurisdiction until November 2021. And it's here that CU wants to build a third campus. It will have 1,100 housing units that are reserved just for CU students and employees, not Boulder residents. It will have 750,000 square feet of additional office, classroom, lab, work, and other space. That's about the size of a pretty good sized shopping mall. It will add 5,000 additional employees, plus athletic facilities and recreation fields, a 3,000 seat stadium, and a transportation hub, retail shops, and a whole bunch of other amenities. It will look like about the size of the main campus if you drive into Boulder when look to the southwest of it. What this does is it facilitates CU's unsustainable growth. For the last 25 years, CU's been growing at about 4% annually. And that means by 2035, there will be 60,000 students in and around the city of Boulder. That's the university's projection. Boulder's roads and housing supply and water resources cannot support this rate of growth. It also makes the housing shortage in the area considerably worse because it doesn't add enough housing to offset the amount of growth that CU already has per year. What they're going to build at CU is at CU South is a simple drop in the bucket. It's not even the annual increase for 1 year of what CU already experiences. It will house approximately 1,500 students. And that is not sufficient to offset any kind of housing shortage. In addition to that, the workers that will be added and who will incommute to work on this campus add another 45 to 30,000 to 40,000 workers, and they will need housing as well because it won't be provided at CU South. Now, an additional problem is that the annexation will cause an increased traffic nightmare in South Boulder. And by the way, I think that as realtors, you should understand that this entire project is going to make it a lot less desirable, not just to live in South Boulder, but to live in all of the areas outside of Boulder that will be affected by the increased traffic, the increased housing, and all of the other kinds of negative effects that I'm going to be talking about. So commuters will have worse traffic coming into Boulder on the Diagonal, Arapahoe, South Boulder Road, and all the other insight roads into Boulder. That's going to add over 6,300 vehicle trips daily to all the roads into the campus. That's already crammed Table Mesa Drive, South Boulder Road, Highways 36 and 93. It's going to overcrowd dangerous intersections. I live right down there, and it's really bad already. And with these increases, it will be unsustainable. And the trip cap plan that CU has proposed to moderate this is poorly monitored. It'll happen once or twice a year, and it has unenforceable so-called trip caps to try to calm down the traffic, and they simply will not work. The annexation also mandates inequitable and inadequate flood design. It locks the city into an inadequate 100-year flood level of protection. It requires a flood design too inflexible to respond to inevitable larger flood events that are going to happen because of climate change. This is because it soaks up all the land possible that might be used to adapt to larger flood events, leaving not only the CU South property and its development, but all the rest of South Boulder increasingly vulnerable to these flood events. It costs $66 million, but it controls only 1 out of Boulder's 14 creeks, and it protects only 1% of all structures in Boulder. And the cost will leave all other Boulder neighborhoods with limited flood protection funding. It also endangers residents' public health and safety. Because it locks the city out of a 500-year flood protection because of CU's demands to limit protection to foster its real estate development. That will assure that people will die in future floods greater than 100-year level. It limits the capacity to evacuate people safely from CU South and South Boulder when floods, wildfires, and other emergencies occur. And we've had plenty of them recently. The emergency was the King Soopers shooting a year ago. Wildfires like the Marshall Fire that was basically started about 1/4 of a mile from the CU South property and 1/2 mile from my house. The NCAR fire in March and 3 other fires in March that caused evacuations that were disastrous in South Boulder just this year. And I can't forget the 2013 flood, and you all probably can't either. I lived there. My mother was in the retirement community in the part of it where the big wall of water hit first. Fortunately, she was fine and nobody died, but it was a really traumatic experience, which I can't forget. The annexation will increase vehicle accidents by creating a dangerous intersection on Highway 93 at Chambers Road, and it worsens all other intersections on the major roads coming into Boulder. And importantly, it builds a campus in a floodplain, in a cul-de-sac, with one tiny access point at Table Mesa Road. that road into the campus is the only access point, and it will have to go over a 25-foot high flood wall that will cross over that road as part of the flood project, just to get into the property. And that says nothing about the people trying to get out. Annexation also endangers all of the South Boulder Creek floodplain. It's the only remaining undeveloped floodplain in Boulder County. It's home to at least 4 threatened species, over 100 species of birds, hundreds of large and small wildlife species, rare tall grass prairie wetland remnants, and a pristine stream, South Boulder Creek. Development will pave over much of it, and pollution from this development will contaminate the rest of it, because damage to the groundwater flows upon which the entire ecosystem depends will become polluted. And it's a prime wetland. It should be preserved. Its soil powerfully sequesters carbon, curbing climate change. The ponds and streams there support myriad rare and interconnected species, and the habitat dates from the last ice age. Its grasslands are critical to ground nesting birds and hundreds of other species. It is a beloved recreation area in the most densely populated part of South Boulder, and it's the only unmanicured outdoors area for bird watching, passive recreation, and just plain being outdoors in South Boulder. And it is not a gift, contrary to the university's loud proclamations. The city has to pay for most of the acreage CU makes available for open space. It's weasel words saying it makes it available if you pay for it. The annexation makes all of this needlessly expensive. It locks Boulder into an ineffective, inadequate $66 million flood mitigation project because it requests a waiver of $10.7 million in facility impact and offset costs that are usually associated with annexation and paid by the property owner to the city. And the city waived these, and guess who's going to pay for them? It adds at least $4 million to the cost of flood control for bringing in fill dirt to raise the level of some of CU's property above the 500-year floodplain so it can be developed, while all the rest of Boulder gets a 100-year flood protection. And it requires the city to pay for each extra acre of land it is, quote, given for flood mitigation. And that will be added to the cost of the flood project. And how do we pay for this? Well, all water bills will increase by $15 a month, a 65% increase in stormwater assessments for at least 6 years. That's commercial, residential, and all ratepayers. And that will be followed by a $63 million bond issue to pay for the flood project itself. And that will be paid for also by increases in utility fees. Now, the sad thing is there are Plan Bs. There are many alternatives for flood control and land use that for the last 20 or 25 years have been floated by experts, by outside experts, by citizens groups, and every one of them has been ridiculed and rejected for decades by the university, by the city, or both. And that is because the big lie is that this annexation is only about development. It is not about good flood control, and it is definitely not about sensible urban growth. It will make everything in the Boulder community considerably less desirable, and it is a very bad deal for Boulder. So that's why we are saying repeal the CU South annexation. That has to happen before we can do anything else. We want to stop this runaway train, and we want people to vote for Measure 2F to repeal Ordinance 8483, no matter how confusing the ballot is. That will allow us to negotiate a real annexation project that does not build in a floodplain, that does provide adequate best practice and cheaper flood mitigation for Boulder residents. And it can protect the environment and the neighborhoods in South Boulder. So this is another view of that beautiful piece of property that is derogated by our opponents as just a dirty old gravel pit or a weed patch. It could be the gem of all of Boulder County. Thanks very much for letting me speak to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, you can go ahead. There you go. Got off share screen. All right. Do I have any questions from the attendees who would like to ask a question? Not seeing any at this point. Let's give them a few moments. And still not seeing any. Let's see if I get any in on.
I understand this is a really, really complicated project and it's been kept pretty much under wraps. So it's hard even to frame questions about it.
All right. Okay, well, if I'm not seeing any questions, we'll go ahead and.
Ender there.
Yeah, I think we'll, why don't we just be respectful of everybody's time. And Margaret, we want to thank you very much for presenting.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, you are so welcome and thanks for the opportunity to be here with you.
You bet. Well, Bolo Realtors would like to thank all of our attendees as well. And just as a reminder, both presentations have been recorded and will be posted later on Bolo's website, which is bolorealtors.com. And thank you all for attending. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.